had been flying cargo ships for 3 years. It was boring work, but it paid well enough. He moved supplies between colony worlds, delivered medicine to mining stations, and sometimes carried mail to places too far for normal transport. His ship was small and old, a vessel called the Morning Calm. It had been his father's ship before him, and his grandfather's before that. The name was painted in fatting letters on the hull. He was 2 days from the system when the distress signal came through. At first, thought it was a mistake. The signal was weak and broken, coming in fragments. He heard screaming, then weapons fire, then nothing but static. The message cut off suddenly, like someone had smashed the transmitter. Stared at the coordinates on his screen. 9 was a mining station. Nothing important, just a small operation run by the people. They were peaceful aliens, gray-skinned and gentle, with large black eyes that made them look sad even when they were happy. They mined rare crystals from the asteroid belt and kept to themselves. The smart thing would be to report the signal to the authorities and keep flying. That was the protocol. Cargo runners were not rescue workers, but had a sister named Sara who worked on mining stations. Every time he heard about accidents or attacks on stations like 9, he thought about her. What if she needed help one day? What if everyone just flew past? He changed course. The trip took 14 hours, did not sleep. He kept the distress signal playing on repeat, listening to those last moments over and over. He tried to hear clues in the noise. Who was attacking? Why? But there was nothing clear, just chaos and fear. When he arrived at 9, the station was dark. All the external lights were off. No ships were docked, no response to his hails. The station just floated there in the black, silent and dead. Felt his stomach tighten. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He docked the Morning Calm carefully and put on his environmental suit. The suit was old like his ship, patched in a dozen places. He checked his plasma pistol. It was a small weapon, barely more than a tool, but it was all he had. Cargo runners were not soldiers. They did not carry military weapons. The airlock opened with a hiss. The air inside the station was still there, but it was cold. Too cold. Someone had turned off the heating systems. Stepped inside, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. His helmet light cut through the darkness. The first body was just inside the corridor. A worker male lying face down. His gray skin had turned pale. There was a burn mark on his back right through the spine. A clean shot. An execution. Knelt beside the body and whispered a prayer his mother had taught him. It was an old prayer from Earth, from Korea. The words felt small in this place of death. He moved deeper into the station. More bodies, a dozen, 2 dozen, they were everywhere. Men, women, young ones barely grown, all shot, all killed where they stood. They had not fought back. They were not fighters. They had mining tools, not weapons. In the cafeteria found a family. A father had died covering his child with his body. Both were gone now, had to stop and breathe. His hands were shaking. Who would do this? Why? The station's nursery was in the lower level. Almost did not go there. He did not want to see what he knew would be there. But he had to check. He had to know if anyone survived. The nursery was small, painted with bright colors that looked sad now in his helmet light. Toys were scattered on the floor. Small beds lined the walls. Most were empty. One was not. A cub was huddled in the corner, wrapped in a blanket. It was tiny, no bigger than a human infant. Its large black eyes stared at with pure terror. When it saw him, it made a sound. A crying sound. A sound that meant fear and pain and loneliness. Pulled off his helmet. The air was cold but breathable. He knelt down slowly and spoke in Korean, keeping his voice soft. "It's okay. I'm here. You're safe now." The cub did not understand his words, but it understood his tone. It crawled toward him, still crying, picked it up gently and wrapped it in his jacket. The little creature was cold and shaking. It pressed against his chest, seeking warmth. "I've got you," whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." He stood up, the cub held carefully in his left arm. He needed to get back to his ship. He needed to get this child to safety. He needed to report this massacre. Someone had to pay for what happened here. Walked back through the corridors, stepping over bodies, carrying the only survivor. His anger grew with each step. These people had done nothing wrong. They were minors. They had families. They had lives. And someone had ended all of that for what? For the minerals in the asteroids. For territory. He was halfway to the docking bay when he heard the voices. They were speaking a language he did not know, harsh and sharp. Language, froze, though we're still here. He moved to the corner and looked around carefully. In the main corridor he saw them. 12 soldiers in black combat armor. Their weapons were heavy and military grade. Their helmets had red visors that glowed in the dark. At the front was a larger soldier with markings on his armor, a commander. They were standing around something on the floor, a body. They were laughing, felt his blood turn to ice. The commander noticed the movement. His helmet turned toward, the laughter stopped. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the commander spoke. His suit had a translator that turned his words into standard galactic speech. Human, put down the animal. You may leave with your life. Looked at the cub in his arms. It was looking up at him with those large black eyes, trusting him, needing him. He thought about his sister Sora. He thought about his mother who had taught him that running away was easy, standing up was hard, but hard things were worth doing. He thought about his father and grandfather who had given him the morning calm. They had been good men, men who helped people, men who did what was right even when it cost them. Lifted his head and looked at the commander. He could see his own reflection in that red visor. He looked small and weak, human. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a cargo runner holding a child. No, he said. His voice was quiet but clear. The commander tilted his head, surprised. What did you say? I said no. His right hand moved to his plasma pistol. His left arm tightened around the cub. The soldiers raised their weapons. 12 barrels pointed at him. The commander spoke again, and this time there was anger in his voice. Then you die with it. Did not run. He stood there holding the cub against his chest, his hand on his weapon. In that moment everything became very simple. He could not save himself. He probably could not save the cub, but he could try. He could fight. He could show these killers that not everyone would run, that some people stood up. The first shot lit up the corridor, moved. The shot came so fast that barely saw it. A bright line of energy burned through the air where his head had been. He threw himself to the side, crashing into the wall. His left arm wrapped around the cub, pulling it close to his chest. He could feel the little creature's heart beating fast against him, or maybe that was his own heart. He could not tell anymore. He landed behind a support column and drew his plasma pistol with his right hand. It felt small and useless. They had military weapons. He had what amounted to a fancy welding torch, but it was all he had. More shots came. They hit the column, melting the metal, filling the air with smoke and the smell of burning. They were not trying to wound him. They were trying to kill. Pressed himself against the column, making himself as small as possible. The cub whimpered against his chest. He could feel it shaking. He whispered in Korean, "Stay quiet, stay still." He did not know if the cub understood, but his tone seemed to help. The crying stopped. Counted to 3 in his head, then spun around the column and fired. 3 shots fast. He did not aim carefully. He just pointed and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolts flew down the corridor. The first shot missed. The second shot missed. The third shot hit a soldier in the chest plate. The armor cracked. The soldier stumbled back, surprised, fired again, hitting the same spot. The armor broke completely. The soldier fell. 1 down, 11 left. The other soldiers scattered, taking cover. They had not expected him to fight back. They thought he would run or beg for mercy, but humans did not always do what others expected. The commander barked orders in language, did not need a translator to understand. They were organizing. They were going to surround him. He needed to move. He ran down a side corridor, his boots pounding on the metal floor. The cub bounced against his chest, but he kept his left arm locked around it. He would not drop it. He would not let go. Behind him, he heard the following. Their armor made heavy sounds. They were fast, but they were not as fast as an unarmored human. New cargo ships and stations. He had grown up on vessels like this. All stations were built the same way, corridors connected to maintenance shafts, shafts connected to lower levels connected to emergency exits. He just needed to think. He just needed to stay ahead. A maintenance shaft opened on his right, ducked inside and pulled the door shut behind him. He heard the run past, their heavy boots fatting down the corridor. He waited, breathing hard, holding the cub close. The shaft was dark and narrow. Perfect. He climbed down the ladder with one hand, using his right hand to grip the rungs while his left arm held the cub against his body. It was awkward and slow, but he managed. At the bottom, he found himself in the lower maintenance level. Pipes and cables ran along the walls. The air was warmer here, closer to the station's power core. Heard voices above him. Two had found the shaft. They were coming down. He moved quickly to a junction and waited. His right hand held his pistol. His left arm held the cub. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to stay calm. The first soldier came around the corner, fired point-blank into the soldier's helmet visor. The glass shattered. The soldier dropped. The second soldier raised his weapon but was already moving. He grabbed a heavy pipe from the wall with his right hand and swung it hard. The pipe hit the soldier's weapon arm. Bones cracked inside the armor. The soldier screamed. Fired twice more. The soldier fell silent. 3 down, 9 left. His right shoulder burned where a shot had grazed him earlier. He had not noticed it during the fight, but now he felt it. Blood was soaking through his shirt. Not a lot, but enough to be a problem if he did not stop it soon. He tore a strip of cloth from his sleeve and wrapped it around the wound with his teeth and right hand. It was not a good bandage, but it would have to do. The cub made a small sound, looked down. Those large black eyes were staring up at him. The little creature reached out with a tiny hand and touched his chest. It was trying to comfort him, or maybe it was just scared and needed to touch something living. Either way, felt something warm in his chest. This child was depending on him. He could not let it down. He moved through the maintenance level, listening for sounds of pursuit. They were above him now, searching the upper corridors. They thought he was still up there. Good. That gave him time. Found what he was looking for, a control panel for the station systems. These old mining stations all had the same layout. He knew where everything was. He opened the panel with his right hand and looked at the controls. Gravity, atmosphere, power, all of it was here. An idea formed in his mind. It was dangerous. It might not work, but it was better than just running until they caught him. He heard footsteps, heavy, close. 2 soldiers were coming down the corridor behind him, made his decision quickly. He pressed several buttons on the control panel, then ran. Behind him, he heard the soldiers shouting. The corridor he had just left suddenly lost atmosphere. Emergency doors slammed shut, sealing the section. The 2 soldiers who had been following him were trapped inside, heard their weapons firing, trying to shoot through the doors. But the doors were designed to withstand asteroid impacts. The soldiers' shots did nothing. After a minute, the firing stopped. The soldiers were gone, sucked out into space through the emergency vents had opened. 5 down, 7 left. Kept moving. His plan had worked, but it had also made noise. The other knew where he was now. He needed to keep moving, keep fighting, keep protecting the cub. He climbed back up to the main level through a different shaft. This time he came out near the medical bay. The lights were still on there, running on emergency power. Inside he could see equipment, supplies, maybe something useful. He entered carefully, his pistol raised. The medical bay was empty. No bodies, no soldiers, just quiet machines and white walls. Set the cub down gently on a medical bed. The little creature looked up at him and made a worried sound. "I need both hands for a minute," said softly. "I'll be right here, I promise." He moved quickly to the medical supplies and found what he needed: real bandages, antiseptic, pain medication. He treated his shoulder properly this time, working fast. The wound was not deep, but it hurt. The medication helped. He was wrapping the final bandage when he heard them. 3 soldiers entering the medical bay from different doors. They had him surrounded. There was no way out. The lead soldier aimed his weapon at, "End of the run, human." His right hand was empty. His pistol was on the counter, too far to reach. The cub was behind him on the bed, crying again. He was out of options, out of tricks, out of time. But humans had survived on Earth for thousands of years. They had hunted animals bigger and stronger than themselves with nothing but stone tools and clever minds. That instinct lived in every human, buried deep. And in that moment, with death staring at him through 3 red visors, that instinct woke up. Grabbed the medical laser cutter from the tray beside him. It was a tool for surgery, meant to cut through flesh and bone with precision. It was not a weapon, but in the right hands, anything could be a weapon. He moved before the soldiers could react. The laser cutter hummed to life in his right hand. He spun low, cutting across the first soldier's legs where the armor was weakest. The soldier fell, kept moving, dodging the second soldier's shot, closing the distance. The laser cut through the soldier's chest plate at the seam. Red blood sprayed. The third soldier got a shot off. It hit in the shoulder, the same shoulder as before. New pain exploded through him, but pain was just information. Information that he was still alive, still fighting. Brought the laser cutter across the third soldier's throat. The soldier dropped. 8 down, 4 left. Fell against the wall, breathing hard. His shoulder was burning. His right hand was shaking. But he grabbed the cub and held it close with his left arm. The little creature pressed against him, seeking his warmth. "We're okay," whispered. "We're still okay." But 4 soldiers remained, and one of them was the commander. Moved through the corridors like a ghost. His shoulder hurt with every step, sending waves of pain down his arm. Blood had soaked through the bandage and was dripping down his right side, but his left arm stayed locked around the cub, holding it tight against his chest. The little creature had stopped crying. Now it just watched him with those large black eyes, quiet and trusting. He passed through the central hub of the station. This was where the workers had gathered for meals and meetings, where they had talked and laughed and lived their lives. Now it was a tomb. Bodies lay everywhere. Had to step over them to move forward. Each time he did, he felt something heavy settle in his chest. A young lay near the wall. She could not have been more than 20 in human years. Her hand was stretched out toward a door, like she had been trying to reach it when she died, trying to escape, but there had been no escape. They had hunted them all down. Near the center of the room, 2 had died holding hands. An older couple, their gray faces peaceful despite the violence. They had died together. At least they had that. At least they had not been alone. In the corner found a child. Not a baby like the one in his arms, but a young one, maybe the cub's older sibling. The child had curled up in a ball, trying to make itself small, trying to hide. It had not worked. There was a burn mark on its back. 1 shot, quick and cold. Knelt beside the body. His legs felt weak. His right hand trembled. He wanted to close the child's eyes, but did not have eyelids. Those large black eyes would stare forever now, seeing nothing. Something changed in then. The fear that had been driving him, the panic that made him run and hide, all of it burned away. What replaced it was colder, harder. It was anger, but not the hot kind. It was the kind of anger that came from seeing too much death, from knowing that these people had done nothing wrong except exist in a place someone else wanted. They had done this, not just killed them but murdered them, hunted them like animals. For what? For minerals, for territory, for fun. Stood up slowly. The cub made a soft sound in his arms. He looked down at it and felt that cold anger grow stronger. This child was an orphan now. Its family was dead. Its home was destroyed, all because of the soldiers still hunting them through this station. He was not going to run anymore. He was not going to hide. He was going to fight. Found a supply room and went inside. With his right hand, he searched through the shelves, mining equipment, tools, explosives for breaking rocks. He took what he could carry, a detonator, 2 charges, a heavy wrench. Everything went into his pockets or his belt. The station had an intercom system. Found a panel and pressed the button. His voice echoed through the empty corridors. "You're still here, still hunting me, but I'm done running. You want to kill me? Come and try." There was silence for a moment. Then the commander's voice came back through the speakers, harsh and mocking. "Brave words from dead man, human. You are bleeding. You are slow. You will fall soon." "Maybe," said, "but I'll take more of you with me first." He moved to the cargo bay. It was a large open space where ships docked to load and unload supplies. Empty cargo containers stood in rows, perfect for an ambush. Set his trap carefully, placing the explosive charges where they would do the most damage. Then he waited. The cub was quiet in his left arm, whispered to it in Korean, the language of his mother and grandmother. "You're going to be okay. I'm going to get you out of here. I promise." The doors opened. 2 soldiers entered, their weapons raised. They moved carefully, checking corners, covering each other. They were trained, professional, but they had made a mistake. They had come to fight a cargo runner. What they found was a human who had nothing left to lose. Waited until they were between the containers. Then he pressed the detonator with his right hand. The explosion was loud and bright. It shook the station. Fire filled the cargo bay for a moment, then died. When the smoke cleared, both soldiers were down. One was dead. The other was badly hurt, trying to crawl away. Walked over and picked up the injured soldier's weapon with his right hand. It was heavy, designed for the larger body, but he could manage. He pointed it at the soldier. The soldier's helmet had cracked in the explosion. Through the crack, could see part of his face. They had rough skin, red and scaled. His eyes were yellow and filled with pain. "Why?" asked. "Why did you kill them? They were miners, they had families, they were not soldiers." The soldier laughed. It was a wet, painful sound. "They were, in our territory, they were, using our resources, they had to be removed." "Removed," repeated. "You mean murdered." "Same thing, human the strong, take what they want, the weak, die, that is, the way." Looked down at the cub in his left arm. The little creature was watching him, its black eyes reflecting his face. He thought about his mother's teachings, about right and wrong, about the value of life. "No," said, "that is not the way, not my way." He fired. The soldier stopped moving. 10 down, 2 left. Picked up ammunition from the dead soldiers. The weapon used energy cells. He took 4 of them and clipped them to his belt. The gun was getting easier to hold. His right hand was learning its weight and balance. He left the cargo bay and moved toward the station's control center. That was where the commander would be. That was where this would end, one way or another. The corridors felt different now. They did not feel like a maze anymore. They felt like a battlefield, and was no longer prey. He was a hunter. He passed more bodies, more families destroyed. Each one added to the weight in his chest. Each one made his anger colder and sharper. The thought they were strong because they had weapons and armor, but strength was not about weapons. It was about what you were willing to endure, what you were willing to sacrifice, what you were willing to die for. Humans understood that. Humans had crawled out of caves and conquered a death world called Earth. They had survived ice ages and predators and plagues. They had learned to make fire and tools and weapons from nothing. That was human strength, not muscle or speed, but the ability to adapt, to endure, to refuse to quit. Heard a sound behind him. He turned, the weapon raised. Another soldier stood there alone. The soldier fired first. The shot hit his right leg. He fell to one knee, gasping. The cub cried out in his left arm. The soldier walked closer, weapon aimed at its head. Should have run, human, should have saved yourself. Looked up at him, his right leg burned, his shoulder throbbed, his right hand could barely feel the weapon anymore. But he was not done, he was not finished. I could have said, but then I would not be human anymore. He swung the heavy wrench he had taken from the supply room. It had been hidden against his leg. The wrench hit the soldier's knee joint, crushing it. The soldier stumbled, fired the weapon with his right hand, shooting up through the soldier's chest plate. The soldier fell. 11 down, 1 left. Dragged himself to his feet. His right leg would barely hold his weight. He was limping now, leaving a trail of blood, but his left arm stayed strong. The cub was still safe against his chest. He limped toward the control center. The commander was waiting for him there. He could feel it. This was where it would end. The lights flickered as he walked. Emergency power was failing. Soon the whole station would be dark. Soon the air would run out, but did not need much time, just enough to finish this, just enough to make sure the cub survived. His mother's voice echoed in his head. Old words, old prayers. She used to say that every person had a choice, to run or to stand, to hide or to fight, to be weak or to be strong. Had made his choice, and he would see it through to the end. The control center was at the heart of the station. It was a large circular room with screens covering the walls. Most of the screens were dead now, showing nothing but static, but some still worked, displaying the empty corridors and rooms throughout the station. A tomb with electronic eyes. Commander stood in the center of the room, waiting. His armor was different from the other soldiers. It was heavier, reinforced with extra plates. His helmet had more sensors. His weapons were custom-made. He was not just a soldier, he was a warrior. When limped through the door, the commander turned to face him. For a moment, neither spoke. They just looked at each other. A human cargo runner, wounded and exhausted, holding a child in his left arm. A commander, armed and armored, standing over the bodies of an entire station. "You killed 11 of my soldiers," said. His translator made his voice sound cold and mechanical. "That is impressive for a human." "They deserved worse," replied. His voice was rough. His throat was dry. He had been breathing hard for too long. Perhaps tilted his head. "But you will join them now, you must know this. You are wounded, slow, weak. There is no escape." Looked down at the cub in his left arm. The little creature was watching him with those large black eyes. It had been quiet for so long, so brave, so trusting. He looked back at the commander. "I know," said, "but the child lives, that is what matters." Laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. "The child, it is nothing, an animal, it will die alone in space when this station fails. Why do you care?" "Because someone has to," said simply. The commander stopped laughing. For a moment he just stared at. Then he spoke again, and this time there was something different in his voice. Confusion, maybe even curiosity. "You humans are strange. You are weak. You have no great strength, no armor, no claws, yet you fight like demons. Why? What drives you?" Thought about that. He thought about his mother, who had raised him alone after his father died. He thought about his sister Sora, working on mining stations far from home to help their family. He thought about the workers who had died here, just trying to live their lives. "We fight for each other," said. "That is what makes us human." Shook his head. "Foolish. Sentiment is weakness. The strong survive, the weak die. That is the law of nature." "No," said. "That is the law of predators. Humans learned a different law. We learned to protect the weak, to stand together. That is how we survived. That is how we became strong." The commander raised his weapon. Enough philosophy, time to die human. Moved. His right leg screamed in pain, but he threw himself to the side as the commander fired. The shot missed, hitting the wall behind where he had been standing. Fired back with the weapon in his right hand. His shot hit the commander's armor and bounced off. The reinforced plates were too strong. advanced, firing rapidly, rolled behind a control console using it as cover. The console exploded as shots hit it, showering him with sparks and debris. He could feel the heat on his face. The cub cried out, pressed it closer to his chest, protecting it with his body. He was running out of options. The weapon was useless against the commander's armor. He needed something else, something better. He looked up at the screens on the walls. One of them showed the station systems, gravity control, life support, emergency systems. All of it was connected to the control center. All of it could be manipulated. Reached up with his right hand and smashed the console beside him. Wires spilled out. He grabbed them, ignoring the electricity that shocked his fingers. He pulled hard, ripping the connections free. The gravity in the room flickered. For a moment, everything became lighter. Stumbled, caught off guard by the sudden change. His heavy armor, which had been an advantage, now made him slower. Pushed off the floor, using the low gravity to move faster than he should have been able to. He flew across the room, his right hand reaching for the emergency controls on the far wall. Behind him, roared and fired. The shots went wide, the commander struggling to aim in the shifting gravity. Hit the emergency panel hard. His right hand slammed down on multiple buttons at once. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Emergency protocols activated throughout the station. The ceiling hatches opened. These were designed for evacuating during fires or atmosphere breaches. They led to the upper levels, to the catwalks that ran above the control center. Jumped, using the low gravity to carry him up through the hatch. His wounded leg could not have made that jump normally, but nothing was normal anymore. He landed on the catwalk and ran. The metal grating was narrow and shook under his feet. Below him, he could see climbing up through the hatch. The commander's armor made him slower, but he was still coming, still hunting. Reached the end of the catwalk and turned. There was nowhere left to go, just a drop back down to the control center floor. He looked at the cub in his left arm. The little creature was watching him, quiet and calm now, like it understood what was happening, like it was trying to be brave for him. "I'm sorry," whispered in Korean. "I tried." Pulled himself onto the catwalk. The metal groaned under his weight. He stood there, weapon raised, victory in his posture. "End of the line, human, you fought well, but the strong always win in the end." Looked at the commander. Then he looked at the catwalk supports. They were old metal corroded from years of use, and they were holding up in full combat armor. Heavy armor, too heavy. With his right hand, aimed his weapon at the support beam nearest to. He fired, once, twice, 3 times. The metal glowed red, then white. It began to bend. Realized what was happening too late. He tried to run back toward the hatch, but the catwalk collapsed. The metal twisted and fell, carrying the commander down with it. Crashed into the control center floor below. His armor cracked from the impact. Jumped down while the gravity was still low. He landed near, his wounded leg nearly giving out. The commander was on his back, struggling to get up. His armor had protected him from the fall, but it was damaged now. Cracked. Vulnerable. Walked over slowly. Every step hurt. Blood dripped from his leg, from his shoulder. His right hand could barely hold the weapon anymore. But he did not need strength now. He just needed to finish it. Looked up at him. The commander's helmet was cracked, and through it could see his face. Red-scaled skin, yellow eyes, and something else. Surprise, maybe even respect. "You fight like a demon," said, his voice weak without the translator. Shook his head. "No, I fight like a human." He found the commander's own weapon nearby where it had fallen. It was heavier than the one he had been using. Military grade. Designed to kill. With his right hand, picked it up and aimed it at the crack in its armor, right over where the heart would be. Said quietly, "For the families you murdered." He fired. The weapon's recoil knocked him backward. He fell hard, landing on his injured leg. Pain exploded through his body. The cub cried out, pressed against his chest. but his left arm stayed locked around it. He had not let go. Through everything, he had not let go. Lay still on the floor. 12 soldiers, all dead now. Justice for a station full of murdered miners. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Lay there for a long moment, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling. The lights were still flickering. The alarms were still blaring. He needed to move, needed to get to his ship, but his body would not respond anymore. He had pushed it too far. The cub made a soft sound, looked down at it. Those large black eyes were filled with worry. The little creature reached out with a tiny hand and touched his face, trying to help, trying to comfort him. "We did it," whispered. "We won." He forced himself to his feet. His right leg would barely hold him. His right hand was numb, but he was not done yet. He had to get the cub to safety. That was all that mattered now. He limped toward the door, leaving a trail of blood behind him. One more task, just one more. Then he could rest. Did not remember much of the walk back to his ship. His body moved on instinct, one foot in front of the other. His right leg dragged behind him, leaving a long red line on the floor. His left arm stayed locked around the cub, holding it close to his chest. The little creature had gone quiet again, either sleeping or too afraid to make noise. The corridors were still filled with bodies, past them without looking. He could not help them now. They were beyond help, but the cub in his arms was alive. That had to be enough. When he reached the docking bay, he saw the morning calm waiting for him, his ship, his home. The faded letters on the hull looked beautiful to him now. He stumbled toward the airlock, his vision blurring at the edges. How much blood had he lost? Too much, probably, but he could not stop. Not yet. The airlock opened with a hiss, climbed inside and sealed it behind him. The familiar sounds of his ship surrounded him. The hum of the engines, the beep of the computers. He was home. He made his way to the cockpit, moving slowly. Every step was harder than the last. His right leg finally gave out halfway there. He fell against the wall and slid down, sitting on the floor. The cub looked up at him with those large black eyes, worried. "I'm okay," lied in Korean. "Just need to rest for a minute." But he knew he could not rest. Not here. Not on this dead station. He needed to get the cub to safety. He needed to tell someone what had happened here. He needed to make sure they paid for this. Pulled himself up using the wall. He stumbled into the cockpit and fell into the pilot chair. His right hand shook as it moved over the controls. He set a course for the nearest colony world, a place called Haven Station. It was 3 days away at normal speed. He had enough fuel, enough air, just barely enough. He activated the emergency beacon with his right hand. The signal would tell other ships that he needed help, that someone on his vessel was hurt. Maybe they would come in time, maybe not, but he had to try. With the last of his strength, secured the cub in the co-pilot's seat. He wrapped it in every blanket he could find. The ship's heater was on full, but the little creature was still shivering. From cold or fear, he could not tell. "You're safe now," whispered. "Help is coming, people will take care of you." The cub reached out and grabbed his right hand with its tiny fingers, holding on, not wanting to be alone, felt his eyes burn. When had he started crying? He set the ship on automatic pilot. The morning calm would fly itself to Haven Station. All he had to do was stay alive long enough to get there. He pulled the first aid kit from under his seat with his right hand and tried to treat his wounds. His shoulder was still bleeding. His leg was worse. He wrapped them both as best he could, but his right hand was clumsy now. Numb. The bandages kept slipping. Gave up after the third try. He was too tired, too hurt. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the cub beside him. The little creature was watching him, those black eyes reflecting the stars outside the window. "Your name," said softly. "You need a name, something to remember where you came from, who you are." He thought about it for a moment, then he smiled. "That was my grandfather's name. He was a good man, strong, kind. He would have liked you." The cub made a soft sound, like it understood, like it was accepting the name, accepting this human who had saved it. His eyes closed. He did not mean for them to. He tried to open them again, but they were too heavy. His body was shutting down, trying to save itself. He fought it for a moment, then stopped fighting. He had done everything he could. The rest was up to fate. His last thought before darkness took him was of the cub. Of safe, alive, that was enough. Time passed, did not know how much. He floated in darkness, sometimes hearing voices, sometimes feeling pain, mostly just nothing. It was peaceful, quiet, like floating in deep water. Then slowly the darkness began to fade. Light crept in at the edges. Sound came back, beeping machines, quiet voices, the smell of antiseptic. Opened his eyes. He was in a medical room, white walls, bright lights. An IV tube ran into his left arm. Machines monitored his heart rate and breathing. He tried to sit up, but his body would not cooperate. A face appeared above him, a human woman with kind eyes. She wore a doctor's uniform. "Easy," she said in Korean. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. You lost a lot of blood." The cub's voice was rough, barely a whisper. "Where is the cub?" The doctor smiled. "Is fine. The consulate took custody. They're caring for him. He's healthy and safe thanks to you." Felt something in his chest loosen. Relief. The cub had survived. That was all that mattered. What happened? "Your emergency beacon brought a patrol ship. They found you unconscious in your cockpit and the cub wrapped in blankets beside you. You were barely alive. We almost lost you twice during surgery." Looked down at himself. His right shoulder was wrapped in clean white bandages. His right leg was in a cast. His right hand was wrapped too, the fingers splinted. "Will I heal?" "Eventually, you'll need physical therapy. Your right hand has nerve damage. It might never work the same way again, but you'll live." The doctor paused. The patrol ship also investigated the station. They found 12 dead soldiers and over 200 dead civilians. "I tried to save them," said. His eyes burned again. "I was too late." "You saved one," the doctor said gently. "One child who would have died alone on that station. That matters. It matters a great deal." Over the next few weeks, the story spread. The patrol ship's report went out to every colony, world, and major station. A human cargo runner had fought 12 soldiers alone while protecting an infant. He had killed all 12 and survived. The galaxy, which had seen humans as unremarkable, started to look at them differently. The people sent a delegation to the hospital. Their leader, an elder named, came to his room. She brought with her. The cub had grown a little in the weeks since the station. When he saw, he made excited sounds and reached for him. Held the cub with his left arm, his right hand still too damaged to help. Nestled against his chest just like before. Like he remembered, like he knew this was the human who had saved him. "My people want to thank you," said. Her voice was soft and sad. "You brought our child back to us. You are a hero to the—" "I'm not a hero," said. "I'm just a cargo runner." "No," said. "You are more than that. You are proof that there are still good people in the galaxy. People who will fight for what is right, even when it costs them everything." Sister Sora came to visit. She cried when she saw him, hugged him carefully, and called him an idiot for risking his life. His mother came too, flying from Earth to be with him. She did not cry. She just held his left hand and smiled. "You did good, my son," she said in Korean. "Your father would be proud, your grandfather too." The Empire never sent an official statement about what happened at 9, but their raids on civilian stations stopped. Word had spread among them too. A warning. Humans were not to be underestimated. Humans, when pushed, could be dangerous. Spent months in physical therapy, learning to use his right hand again. It would never be as strong as before. The fingers did not move quite right, but he could hold things. He could work controls. He could fly his ship. When he was finally released from the hospital, he returned to the morning calm. The ship had been cleaned and repaired. Someone he never learned who had repainted the letters on the hull. They were bright and clear now. Morning Calm, a good name for a ship that brought hope out of darkness. Started flying cargo again, but things were different now. Other species knew his name. When he docked at stations, people wanted to meet him, to shake his hand, to hear his story. He told it simply, without making himself sound brave. He was just a person who did what needed to be done. Stayed with the consulate, learning about his people and their history. But during school breaks, he would ride with on the Morning Calm. The ship's cockpit had a second seat now, installed especially for him. He would sit there and watch the stars, just like he had that terrible day when saved his life. Years passed, grew into a young adult, strong and smart and kind. He became a diplomat working to build peace between species. He wore a small pin on his clothes always. It was shaped like a human cargo ship. When people asked about it, he would tell them the story of the human who held a cub in one hand and corpses in the other. Grew older too. His right hand never fully healed, but he learned to live with it. He kept flying cargo between the stars, helping people, carrying supplies to those who needed them. He never tried to be a hero again. He did not need to. He had already proven what one person could do when they refused to run, when they chose to stand. On quiet nights when his ship drifted through the black between worlds, would look at his right hand. He would see the scars, feel the stiffness, remember the pain, but he would also remember the weight of a cub pressed against his chest, the sound of its heartbeat, the trust in those large black eyes. That was worth all the scars, worth all the pain, worth everything. That was the human way, to protect the weak, to fight for those who could not fight for themselves, to stand up even when standing meant dying, not because it was easy, not because it would be rewarded, but because it was right. The galaxy had learned that lesson on a dead mining station called 9, from one human, one cargo runner, one man who looked at 12 soldiers and refused to let them win. His name was, and the stars would remember him,